Well, the Minnesota Twins are in free fall. Good news is the rest of the AL Central is as well. Welcome to the Twinkie Town Tavern, where the beer is always cold, the Twins talk is always hot, and the stools are always open. I'm your host, Josh Kolojeski, inviting you to grab a drink, pull up a chair, and let's talk about the Twins falling to the Kansas City Royals and dropping their series to the Royals 2-1 on Wednesday. Well, the good news, the Minnesota Twins won't have to face Noah Cameron until 2027. The bad news, he made the most of his final start against Minnesota on Wednesday. Cameron holds the Minnesota Twins down for the fourth time this season, keeping the game scoreless until the fourth. That's when Josh Bell draws a walk and uses a savvy base running move to prevent a double play and also get to second on a Cody Clemens grounder. Royce Lewis gets a bunt single to load the bases before Victor Garantini hits into a run-scoring double play to give Minnesota a one-run lead. Meanwhile, Dean Kramer was cruising in his Twins debut until the fifth. A couple of ground ball singles and a walk loads the bases before Kyle Isbell hits a sacrifice fly as Kansas City ties the game. Kramer gets a no decision after striking out two and walking two and allowing one run on 3 hits in 5 innings. The game stays tied until the bottom of the 7th when A.J. Minter hangs a cutter to Michael Massey, who crushes a solo home run to give Kansas City the lead. Twins don't even threaten to score from there and lose 2-1. Minnesota remains in third place in the AL Central, now at 56 and 59. They are 4 games behind Chicago in the AL Central race and 1 game behind Cleveland and Texas, who both are tied for the final AL wildcard spot. Let's get into it. The Minnesota Twins are on a 4-game losing streak. The only saving grace right now is that the Tigers lost yesterday, so the Twins don't fall to 4th place, which they would have if the Tigers had won their game. The Guardians and the White Sox also lose yesterday, so the Twins haven't fallen back in the AL Central race or the AL wildcard race, although they have a couple of new teams ahead of them in the AL wildcard race, with both Texas and Baltimore earning wins, so that's a couple of more teams that they have to pass in order to get into the AL wildcard position. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We still are just a game out of a playoff spot and 4 games out of a division title, as ridiculous as this last stretch of games has been for your Minnesota Twins. Well, we'll talk about some of the stuff that happened in this one that, again, is frustrating. Maybe not as frustrating as the series opener was when we were getting squandered or squished by Randy Dobnak, and Joe Ryan continued his collapse. But it still was a frustrating game nonetheless. And at this moment, we'd like to thank you for joining us here in the Twinkie Town Tavern and remind you that we are a part of the Grey Duck Sports Network. Follow us on Twitter and YouTube at Grey Duck Sports, and we're also on TikTok at grey.duck.sports. There you can find all of our podcasts, the Twinkie Town Tavern, the Vibe of the Vikings, and the Grey Duck NFL Show, and clips from those shows, as well as a series of shorts having to do with this history of Minnesota sports, the Minnesota Vikings, Minnesota Twins in particular, and the NFL at large. Again, that is at Grey Duck Sports on both Twitter and YouTube, and at grey.duck.sports on TikTok. Well, Noah Cameron, I never want to see again. I hope that Noah Cameron gets traded this offseason to like a whole different realm of reality, because what Noah Cameron has been able to do to the Minnesota Twins throughout his career, and in particular this season, has been a war crime if you are a fan of the state of Minnesota, and particularly the state of Minnesota's professional baseball team. Noah Cameron is war criminal number 1, who has just dominated this Minnesota Twins lineup time and time again. And I'm not as frustrated as the Twins at the Twins' lack of offense in Wednesday's game as I was on Tuesday's game, because Noah Cameron is a major league caliber pitcher. As we said time and time again, Randy Dobnak is obviously not a major league caliber pitcher. He might not even be an International League caliber pitcher. Randy Dobnak might be best served in the high school dugout as some team's pitching coach and foray of the state of Arizona. That's where Randy Dobnak is probably best suited for as a baseball player / personnel. Noah Cameron, a bit different. He is somewhat of a touted prospect in the Royals system in his second year and has had some good major league success. Although if you look at the numbers, Noah Cameron's success is heavily weighed by his starts against the Minnesota Twins. He has just a 0.6 wins above replacement this year, and I think if you took out his 4 starts against the Minnesota Twins, he would have a negative wins above replacement level. So even though Noah Cameron is of a higher quality than Randy Dobnak, he still is not this otherworldly starting pitcher that the Minnesota Twins have made him out to be whenever they've gone up against him this season. Let's just look at the numbers. 4 different starts he's made against the Twins. The first in April, 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, 0 home run, gets the win. Another start, May or June, 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 0 earned runs, 1 unearned run, 7 strikeouts, no walks, no home runs. Got the win there. And then a no decision in his start last week against Minnesota, only because of a ultimate grand slam by Cody Clemens. That was 8 innings pitched, 1 hit, 0 runs, 7 strikeouts, 2 walks, and 0 home runs. And then this game, 8 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, and 0 home runs. Add all of that up, and in 4 starts this year, Noah Cameron against the Minnesota Twins is 3-0, 27 innings pitched, only has given up 10 hits, only has allowed 2 earned runs and 1 unearned run, has walked just 4 hitters, has struck out 28, has not allowed a single home run, which puts his ERA against the Twins this year in 4 starts at 0.67. His walks and hits per inning pitched, 0.519, and his fielding independent pitching, 1.53. Every indicator of his stats, both on the surface level and the under the hood numbers, points to Noah Cameron being the best pitcher in baseball as long as he is facing the Minnesota Twins. If he went up against him 32 times this season, Noah Cameron would be your runaway Cy Young candidate, I am sure. And then you look on the opposite side, just subtracting those starts from the rest of his body of work, and he becomes a player that is fighting all season for a spot, for a chance to even stay in a team's rotation, and certainly wouldn't be in the rotation of any playoff team, because here are his numbers when he's not facing the Minnesota Twins and is facing the rest of Major League Baseball. 18 games, 17 games started. His record, 3-8. 96 2/3 innings of work, 108 hits, 58 earned runs, 62 runs total, so 4 unearned runs, 36 walks, 88 strikeouts, 14 home runs. Those numbers, a 5.40 ERA, a 1.490 walks hits per inning pitch, whip, and a 4.34 fielding independent pitching, or FIP. Not quite the pitcher that he is against the Minnesota Twins when he is facing a team that is not the Minnesota Twins. So even though he is a major league caliber pitcher, he is a bad major league caliber pitcher, and the Minnesota Twins are making him look like Cy Young, just like they made Randy Dobnak look like Randy Johnson. And that is starting to be a bit frustrating. Now, Noah Cameron, I think most of the reason why he has pitched poorly against other teams is because of the way he uses his pitches against other teams rather than against the Twins, where against the Twins, his fastball is more of a tertiary pitch, and he relies on the changeup, curveball, and slider at like a 60% level combined, and uses all 5 of his 6 pitches at a 10+% usage rate, and his changeup, slider, and curve are all excellent pitches. His fastball is not. His sinker and splitter and cutter are not. So all of his fastball variation pitches are bad. All of his breaking or off-speed variation pitches are solid. And against the Twins, for whatever reason, he decides to use his good pitches at a higher rate, and it ends up flustering the Twins hitters all throughout the game. And then against the rest of Major League Baseball, he uses his fastball as his most used pitch at about 27 to 28%. He only used it about 15% against Minnesota. So I think he just has he likes to punish Minnesota. He has some sort of vendetta against the Twins because that is when he decides, okay, I'm going to use my good pitches against them. And he did that time and time again this season, especially in this game against Minnesota that ended up being a Twins loss and setting them back 3 games behind 500. And that has just kind of been the theme of the season. The trend of the season is whenever Minnesota gets up to 500 or near 500, maybe even a tinge above 500, then they go on a losing streak. And that is exactly what is happening right now with the Twins losing their last 4 games. And Noah Cameron, a significant part of that. But again, we don't have to ever see Noah Cameron again during the 2026 campaign. So that is something that we are certainly going to be happy about. Another thing that this game is it was a complete showcase of the Minnesota Twins trade deadline moves. This was Jeremy Zoll. Here is what you have done with this team. Here is how you have improved this team. Now, unfortunately, it ended up with this showcase being a loss, but every single one of the 4 players Minnesota has acquired since July 10th pitched in this game, played in this game. And that was Dean Kramer, Tommy Nance, AJ Minter, and Jeff Hoffman. Dean Kramer, of course, gets his start. It's his first as a Minnesota Twin, and he gets good results with the 5 innings of work and only giving up 1 run. That is what you want to see from your starting pitcher, but under the hood, it looked a little bit worse. The good news is only 5 of the balls that were hit against him were hit hard, and most everything was on the ground in this game, so he wasn't elevating his pitches. However, he was nibbling a bit throughout the game, and there were 33 pitches in the zone. Of his 88, 55 were out of the zone. So if teams see that, they're going to be a little bit more patient against Dean Kramer and not just give him the weak contact that he is trying to coax out of hitters throughout the course of an at-bat. So the location still isn't great, and that was the major indicator of why his ERA has been so high and higher than it had over the last 3 seasons, where his ERA stayed right around 4.1, just a degree or 2 above or below in all 3 of those years, and then skyrocketed up for the 2026 season while he went to 6.5 before he made his start yesterday. His ERA was at 6.50 in 8 starts, and the reason was his stuff really hasn't changed. It's never been great. It's always been a bit below average, but he typically in the past had been able to locate and command his pitches well, throw them not only in the strike zone, but specifically where he wants to throw them against each hitter to try to coax out as much weak contact as possible. And he hasn't been able to do that this year. Maybe you can say yesterday he was able to do that, but again, he is doing a lot more nibbling and a lot less attacking the zone, which I think you want to see with these pitch-to-contact pitchers. If you get into nibbling, then you're going to have instances where a lot of these pitches that are borderline are going to be just watched by hitters, and you're going to get into 2-0, 3-1 counts, and are going to have to throw more favorable pitches to the hitters that are going up against you. And I think it is some sort of saving grace that he was going up against the Kansas City Royals today, whose offense isn't necessarily spectacular. So it's not a good hitting team that will swing a lot and swing early and give away at bats and put together a lot of weak contact. So he got the benefit from that. In order to sustain that good number that he put up on the surface level of 5 innings and just 1 run and 3 hits, he's going to need to attack the zone early on in the counts a little bit more in order to coax hitters of better teams, better hitters in Major League Baseball, to swing at some of these pitches down in the zone, outside of the zone, to induce that weak sort of contact. If he's just going to be nibbling, they're not going to offer at those pitches, and it's going to be a much harder time for Dean Kramer to get outs because he's going to be working with a lot of traffic. So his stuff wasn't great. Still want to see the location refined, but he got the results at the very least in this game against Kansas City. A no decision and put up good numbers. Tommy Nance also pitched. He pitched in the 6th inning after Dean Kramer's day was done. Only needed to throw 7 pitches. It was a short outing. It was fine. Very small sample size. You can't tell much from it, but it's a scoreless inning of work. So well done, Tommy Nance, on being able to shut down the Kansas City Royals. And again, making them, if you're throwing just 7 pitches in an inning, and getting 3 outs, well, then you're making them swing early on in the count. Each and every hitter is swinging early on in the count, and Tommy Nance able to do that, induce weak contact, much like Dean Kramer, and just in a much smaller sample size sort of setting. Then A.J. Minter, probably the lone blemish of the trade deadline showcase, trademark that, on August 5th. Most of his pitches are pretty good. I don't know why he throws his cutter, because it doesn't cut. He throws it when he is going up against a left-handed hitter, because it kind of acts as his breaking ball. He throws the cutter, he hangs it well up in the zone, but it doesn't move. It doesn't move horizontally. Maybe has a little bit more dip than the fastball vertically, but it stays on the same plane as the fastball horizontally. So it's not getting any extra movement. You're hanging it, and Michael Massey is crushing it out of the park. My advice would be, A.J. Minter, just don't use that cutter anymore, because the changeup plays and the fastball is good enough. Go with the changeup fastball combination. Let's leave that cutter in the clubhouse whenever it is we take the field. Leave it in the bullpen and just come out and throw that fastball changeup combo, because that cutter has absolutely no break, or at least it did not have any break in this game against the Kansas City Royals. Maybe it was just an off night with the cutter. We'll see the next time he comes out to pitch for Minnesota, but he ends up getting tagged with a loss because he gives up that solo home run to Michael Massey in the 7th inning. And then finally, the last player from the trade deadline that Minnesota acquired is Jeff Hoffman. And this, just like Dean Kramer, was Hoffman's Twins debut. Both Nance and Minter, as we've mentioned, have pitched a couple of appearances out of the bullpen for Minnesota since being acquired. But this was Jeff Hoffman's first Twins appearance, and it looked as expected, which was very, very good. Very exciting slider. When you look at how far the slider moves on a horizontal plane from the release of Jeff Hoffman, it doesn't actually move that much horizontally, but relative to where because his fastball has so much run to it, relative to where the fastball ends up after his release, the slider has a lot of horizontal break off of the fastball, even if it doesn't have horizontal break off of the release. It looks a lot different than the fastball, and that's why he's able to get such a high whiff rate. In this game, hitters swung at 7 of Hoffman's pitches, and they swung through 3 of them without making any sort of contact. That was a 43% whiff rate for a guy that has a career high in whiff rate, 37 or 39% coming into this trade from Toronto. He is able to put together a 43% whiff rate in his first appearance with the Minnesota Twins. Looks really good. You love to see that from a guy making his Twins debut, especially for a guy that's going to be relied upon in some of these high leverage situations out of the Twins bullpen time and time again. So good on Jeff Hoffman in that game. And if I had to rank the 4 players from the trade deadline and how they performed in this first game where they all played, it would be Jeff Hoffman number 1, because everything looked he got the good results and everything looked sustainable. Tommy Nance and Dean Kramer tied for number 2 and number 3, with Nance maybe getting a nod ahead. Nance has a bit better stuff and got the same sort of results as Dean Kramer. Dean Kramer, I think, if he continued to pitch in this game the rest of the season, in all of the games the rest of the season, if it looked exactly like this, I think other teams would be able to batter him a little bit more, and he would give up more runs. So I don't think his success on the surface is as sustainable if it is just what he showed from this game throughout the rest of the season. That does worry me just a bit. So he comes in at number 3. And then A.J. Minter for this game specifically, number 4, because he just insisted upon throwing that bad cutter and got punished for it on that Michael Massey home run. So again, in the deadline showcase in the middle game of the series against the Kansas City Royals. Our showcase results were number 1, Jeff Hoffman, number 2, Tommy Nance, number 3, Dean Kramer, number 4, AJ Minter. That is how they all looked in their first game, all pitching in the same game since being acquired. Third takeaway from this is a longer range takeaway, and that is since the All-Star break, this offense has been very bad. And the Twins, I think, are getting lucky that they have not fallen out of the wild card race and AL Central race completely. Because in the 18 games since the All-Star break, they have a losing record. It's 8-10, which isn't great. But when we look at some of the numbers in just a moment, you're going to see that it's actually better than they should be performing right now. This is a team that probably could be 6 or 7 games out of an AL Central spot and 3 or 4 games out of a wild card spot if things went according to expectations. In 18 games since the All-Star break, the Minnesota Twins have 64 runs. That is 3.5 runs per game. If you were to extrapolate that out to a 162-game season, that is 576 runs over the course of a season. That is the trend that Minnesota has had since the All-Star break. They've given up 86 runs, about 4 3/4 runs per game in those 18 games, which is about 774 runs extrapolated throughout the course of the season. And now there's a stat called the Pythagorean win-loss, which helps, based on your run differential, to decide what is your true level if we were to take variance out of the equation. How many games does a team that gives up that many runs and scores this many runs, how many games on average does that team tend to win? And in an 18-game set, a team that has given up 86 runs and has scored just 64 is projected to go 6-12. So 2 games worse than Minnesota has gone during this time at that 8-10 rate. And you have to be concerned about what that means for the rest of the way. And now it's just an 18-game sample size, but it's been pretty bad for that 18 games. It's been against, like we've said, subpar pitchers a lot more often than not. It's been twice against Randy Dobnak. It's been twice against Noah Cameron. Their guys are just not hitting in the way that they were throughout June and the first part of July, where it seemed like everybody's OPS during those months was above 850. Some guys are still hitting. Josh Bell, I think, is doing a pretty good job. Royce Lewis has really continued to explode, and Ryan Jefferson, since coming off of the injured list, has picked up right where he has left off, but a lot of guys are starting to diminish a little bit. Victor Caratini in particular. And the Minnesota Twins only scored a run in this game because of, you could say, savvy base running, or you could say just bad infield fundamentals by the Kansas City Royals. The one run only scored because after Josh Bell walked, there was a ground ball to second baseman Michael Massey, who could have flipped to second, thrown to first, and it would have been a double play. But Josh Bell stops in front of him and kind of tricks him, Michael Massey, I guess, into thinking it needed to be a rundown because he starts running back towards first. Michael Massey chases him down, doesn't tag him, throws it towards first late, so Cody Clemens gets onto first base. And Josh Bell, after it's thrown by Michael Massey, is able to get his hand in on second base and get there safely. So a savvy base running move, sure, but also if you were a second baseman, you're taught just to either tag the runner at that point or ignore the runner and just flip to second as soon as you get the ball in the first place. And that's what he should have done. Probably could have gotten 2 outs, probably would have been bases empty. Royce Lewis doesn't bunt. So, might just be a 1-2-3 inning, and instead of losing this game 2-1, the Twins lose it 2-0, and we're talking about how even more about how bad this offense has looked. So savvy base running, fielding mistake, and then the only reason that the bases were loaded and it wasn't second and third with 1 out was because Royce Lewis's bunt, on the bunt, Noah Cameron, his only blemish from this game was he stumbled off of the mound, and it was a push bunt up to the first base side, and the first baseman had to come out to grab it. And because Noah Cameron was late getting off the mound because of his stumble, he gets to first late and had no shot. at getting Royce Lewis, at beating Royce Lewis to the bag. So 2 fielding mistakes, loads the bases with nobody out, and then it's a double play that ends up scoring the run. Not a lot of offense to write home about, even with that 1 run being scored, because that 1 run was kind of a fluke sort of run. So it has not looked good for this Minnesota Twins offense, and it needs to. If this team wants to compete throughout the final 2 months of the season, this offense needs to take a significant step forward. And at some point, as good as Ryan Kreidler has been this season, you need to bring up Kalen Culpepper. At some point, even though we all love Austin Martin, and I guess he kind of robbed a home run or maybe robbed an extra base hit in the game in the 9th inning or the 8th inning, at some point you need to bring up Walker Jenkins. At some point you need to bring up Gabriel Gonzalez. And you need to bring up these players who have a lot of offensive promise. If they don't have the offensive promise in these 2 months of the season, well, at least you went down swinging and didn't just rely on a whole bunch of guys that came into the year as seat fillers. Seat fillers, I think, now for longer than we originally expected, but seat fillers nonetheless. Now, you don't want to take Trevor Larnach out of the lineup, and you're going to get Byron Buxton back at some point, but we don't need to see any more Tristan Gray. Ryan Kreidler, it'd be nice to see as a utility player or a defensive replacement. I'm not sure how much more of him we need to see at the plate. Victor Carantini, Alex Jackson, 2 guys that are backup catchers, creating a logjam and preventing another player that has more position versatility and probably a better bat than both of those 2 guys. You can keep one of them up here, send the other one down. At this point, I would send Carantini down and leave Alex Jackson, because even though it's been in a smaller sample size, he's shown consistency at hitting throughout the course of the season. But you need to start bringing up these high-caliber prospects that are going to be the future of this team. The future can start right now. They can be complementary pieces to the players that are performing well, like Royce Lewis, like Trevor Larnach, and eventually like Byron Buxton and like Ryan Jeffers. And if they don't perform up to that level, well, at least you got a good look. You can see, did they not perform because of some holes in their swing? Was it just some bad luck? And you can have a better clue as to what these prospects are going to be at the major league level throughout the rest of their career going into the 2027 season. Get Walker Jenkins up here, get Kalen Culpepper up here as soon as possible, because this offense needs help, and it is a trend over the last 18 games now that this offense has not been able to get the job done when it is mattered the most. Some guys have, most of these guys have not, and we need to get the youngsters a shot to see if they can contribute to a playoff race down the stretch, and if they can, then this is a much better team. But it's been enough time now. Jenkins, Culpepper, Gonzalez, it is your time to shine. So, Jeremy Zoll, hopefully you're listening. Pole Lads, hopefully you're listening. And Derek Shelton, wherever you are, hopefully you are listening as well. And that those moves can be made so that this offense can be saved and brought back to the high level that it was performing at before the All-Star break. Quick note on Joe Ryan. He is dealing with some glute and back issues. We talked about there were 3 reasons why Joe Ryan has been performing so badly since the All-Star break, and one of the reasons was, well, maybe he's hiding an injury. That seems to have been the case. He's going back to Minnesota as the team will play one more game against Kansas City in Kansas City, then they'll go out to Milwaukee. Joe Ryan doesn't have to pitch in any of those games, except maybe if he were to pitch, it would be on Sunday against Milwaukee. In the series finale, and it gives him plenty of time to get checked up, and if he gets a clean bill of health, can be back in Milwaukee, take the 5-hour car ride if he needs to, over to eastern Wisconsin to rejoin the team then. And if it is something a bit more malignant of an injury, then obviously you just put him on the injured list and have Kendry Rojas or whoever, Zebby Matthews probably ready to go and take Ryan's spot in the rotation as he takes a stint on the injured list. But again, it is disappointing that Ryan has been dealing with an injury, has said that he isn't able to fully execute his mechanics, and had apparently either lied or not had either lied to the team, or the team heard about his injury and didn't think much of it. He's getting his glutes and back issue dealt with. So that's the good news, is that there is some injury stuff going on there, and it's not an arm injury. The drop in velocity at times can make you think, okay, this is an arm injury, and it sometimes is a precursor to a Tommy John sort of surgery or a shoulder injury that shuts you down for the rest of the season. It does not look like that is the case. It looks like these issues are more related to his glute and to his back. So hopefully he is able to get some sort of recovery plan going. Maybe it is a 15-day stint on the injured list, and we'll see some more Zebby Matthews or some more Kendry Rojas, whoever it is they decide to call up. But as of right now, it doesn't look like it would be a significant arm injury. And if he can get that glute and back issue cleaned up, then maybe he can be back to the Joe Ryan we saw at the beginning of the season. That was an all-star and an ace in this Minnesota Twins rotation. Well, the Twins will look to salvage their series against the Kansas City Royals this evening in the series finale and the season series finale as well. The Twins will send Bailey Ober to the mound against Michael Wacha. Bailey Ober is 7-3 this season with a 4.45 ERA. Meanwhile, Micah Wacha is 5-8 with a 3.51 earned run average. That game, first pitch, is scheduled for 6:40 p.m. Central Time. And that is going to be the last call on the Twins Talk for today. Thanks for pulling up a stool and joining the conversation at the Twinkie Town Tavern. We'll see you back here after the next one. Go Twins!